Okay, Bershut Kavod Harav, Chazak U'Baruch again for having me here. I'm very honored and pleased to be here. Thank you. And thank you for Chazak, for always being mechazek the entire community for Torah and mitzvot and for wonderful things. Tizku mitzvot. Hashem should give you all the berachot Be'ezrat Hashem. So the topic we like to speak today is about how one should conduct themselves in dangerous times as these times. These times are, as you could see, not too safe. Should a person take precaution? How is the precaution that one should take? In other words, should you live your life normally, regularly, or should one, for example, give you an example, apply for a gun permit? It's very important to apply for a gun permit. Or maybe you should say, it's not needed. Live your life. Don't worry about it. All is good. All in Hashem's hands. If the bullet is supposed to come to you, you're not going to be able to avoid it. And if you, if it's not, then it's not. Then you don't need to do anything towards that. Another example: should schools and yeshivot and large shuls should have a security guard outside, because today time you don't know. So let's address a few of these questions and see how the Torah would look at such things. So first, you need to realize there's extensive talk about when one should be protecting himself more than the usual, more than the normal. Should a person, as we said, live his life as usual? Who asked this question? There's a few places, but very famous, at Mesilot Yesharim. He brings down in Perek Tet the following thing. עוד ממפסידי הזריזות הוא רוב הפחד וגודל המורא מן הזמן ותולדותיו. One of the factors that leads a person to a loss of the midat zerizut is being excessively scared. רוב הפחד וגודל המורא is always in fear. כי פעם יראה מהקור או מהחום, ופעם מהפגעים, ופעם מן החולאים, פעם מן הרוח. Always these things to be concerned of, that you might get hurt because of weather, because of different things that happen around the world. Traveling, going to business, going out outside your house. Today going out of the house can have multiple risks. Traffic, accidents, robberies, who knows? It's endless, especially if you live in a place like New York, endless. Should a person be fearful to get out of the house? Says the Mesilot Yesharim, on that Shlomo HaMelech warned, Amar Atzel, Shachal Bader Hari Ben Rechovot. A person that's lazy always has an excuse. What's the excuse? For example, he says, oh, there's lions around the streets. Lions doesn't have to mean literally lions. It could mean robbers. You live in New York, as we said, you get out of the house, you could get hit by a million different things that could really destroy a person. כבר גינו חכמינו זיכרונם לברכה המידה הזאת ויחסו אל החטאים. This is wrong. The Chachamim already declared it as something that is false, that is wrong, and is considered a sin. And the pasuk says, פחדו בציון חטאים, החזר העדה חנפים. A person that's scared, he just demonstrated that he's a sinner. We'll see why. אחד הגדולים אמר El Talmido, when he saw one of the Gdolim in the Gemara, it's a Gemara in Brachot Daf Samech, when he saw his student, he saw him scared. He told him, Chata'at, you're a sinner. If you're scared, you're a sinner. Why? As we said in the Pasuk, Pachadu Betzion Chataim. Those that are scared, obviously it comes from a fear that the sin arises in them. Rather, what should a person should do? Betach b'Hashem v'aseh tov shchon eretz v'r'eh emunah. A person should trust Hashem. Don't worry about everything that might come to harm you. כללו של דבר, צריך שישים האדם את עצמו הרי בעולם הזה, קבוע בעבודה, and so on and so forth. Now, he comes and asks the following question. שמא תאמר, הם מצינו חכמים בכל מקום שישמור האדם את עצמו שמירה מעולה. ולא ישים עצמו בסכנה, אפילו הוא צדיק ובעל מעשים. He asks on that a question. We see that Chachamim warned us and directed us that a person should always make sure to protect himself in every possible way. הרי הם יצינו שחייבו חכמים obligated, שישמור אדם את עצמו שמירה מעולה, overprotection, שמירה מעולה, ולא ישים עצמו בסכנה, should not put himself in a place of danger. אפילו צדיק ובעל מעשים, even if he's a righteous person, that he feels that Hashem should protect him. Gemara says in Brachot, in Baba Batra, דף ט, the Gemara says over there, that תלמידי חכמים אינם צריכים שמירה. דף ח, תלמידי חכמים אינם צריכים שמירה. Sages, scholars, don't need protection. Why? התורה משמרתן. The Torah protects them. אני חומה ושדי כמגדלות. אני חומה זו תורה, ושדי כמגדלות אלו תלמידי חכמים. They're protected, they have walls protecting them. So therefore, should not worry about anything. But on the other hand, a person, he says over here, should protect himself, even if he's a tzaddik ubal maasim. Where do we learn that? From many places. For instance, it says in the Gemara Ktuvot, דף למד, הכל בידי שמיים חוץ מצינים ופחים. ומקרא כתוב, ונשמרתם מאוד לנפשותיכם. A person should make sure that he protects himself. נשמרתם מאוד לנפשותיכם. The Torah goes out of the way to emphasize this מאוד very much. הרי שאין להחליט הביטחון הזה על כל פנים, והאתם אמרו אפילו לדבר מצווה, when a person goes to do a מצווה, don't say that שומר מצווה לא ידע דבר רע. You have to protect yourself. So there's contradictions. When do you say שומר תאים השם? When do you say שומר מצווה לא ידע דבר רע? That you're protected once you're going to do a מצווה. You're protected once you deal with Hashem בתמימות, without being too manipulated and too overly calculated. And when do you say that no, a person should do the shmirah, a person should try to take protection, a person should be nishmartem מאוד לנפשותיכם? Says the Mesilat Yesharim, da כי יש יראה ויש יראה. יש יראה ראויה ויש יראה שוטה. There's two types of fears. One is a correct fear and one is incorrect. It's יראה שוטה. It's ignorant fear. יש ביטחון ויש הוללות. There is something that's called bitachon. You trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you put your trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and יש הוללות, things that are considered foolish. כי הנה הקדוש ברוך הוא עשה את האדם בעל שכל נכון, סברה נכוחה, שינהג עצמו על דרך טוב וישמר מן הדברים המזיקים אשר נבראו לאנוש את הרשעים. And therefore, מי שירצה שלא ינהוג עצמו בדרך החוכמה ויפקיר עצמו לסכנות, if you put yourself out for different dangers, you make yourself vulnerable for different dangers, אין זה ביטחון, אלא הוללות. You can't say that I'm putting myself in a place of danger and I'm trusting Hashem. So much to the point that Chazal tell us in Shabbat Lamed Gimel that a person should not put himself in a place that he'll say a miracle would come to him. Why? Because if he says so, even if the miracle, first of all, who says that the miracle would come and save him? But even if he does, they'll take away from his merits. That's how the Gemara says over there. So we see that one must not put himself in place of danger. הנה הוא חוטא במה שהוא עושה נגד רצון הבורא יתברך שרוצה שישמור האדם את עצמו. הקדוש ברוך הוא wants us to that each person should protect himself, put himself in a place that's protected. נמצא שמלבד הסכנה מוטבע דבר אשר הוא עלול אליה מפני חיסרון שמירתו, הנה עוד מתחייב בנפשו בקום עשה בחטא אשר הוא חוטא. נמצא החטא עצמו מביאו להענש. אולם השמירה הראויה. What is the correct way that a person, we said, should make sure that he's guarded? וזאת היראה המיוסדת על הנהגת החוכמה והשכל. He explained, הכלל להבחין בין שני היראות, ומה שלקו חכמים, איכא דשכיחא היזקה שני. This is the code. איכא דשכיחא היזקה שני, which means, when are you supposed to be protecting yourself? איכא דשכיחא היזקה. What does it mean, שכיחא היזקה? שכיחא היזקה means that the hezek, the danger, the risk is common, is imminent, is something that's around the corner that you have to protect yourself from. But if it's not here, you're just thinking maybe this will happen, maybe that will happen, this is something that's considered a sin to think that way. It would completely hold you back from going through your day's schedule. It's really like paralyzes a person. It's no good. It's considered something that is negative. And I remember One time, long time ago, I was in a shul and a person came to me. He told me he's always constantly worried and scared. Worried and scared. What is he worried? All kinds of. If a person starts thinking, there's all types of worries that a person needs to be that you can occupy your mind with. You're not allowed to be living occupied with worries and fears. That's what it says over here. When are you supposed to take precaution? Hecha, the shchicha, hezeka, shani. Whenever the hezek is shachiach. Shachiach means it's common. Whenever that's common, that's when you take protection. Coming back to us, for example, as long as people lived in peace over here in America, I remember up to a few years ago, it was pretty peaceful in America. You walk down the street, you can walk down the street even in the middle of the night, nothing would happen. It was very uncommon. It used to be much safer. Then slowly, before the previous elections, terrible. It became terrible. Even before the terrorists. Terrorists were always. But even beforehand, New York became already a looting town, terrorizing, again, without even the terrorists that of today. It became dangerous in New York. So you have to take precaution. What's the precaution you take? For instance, you can't go at night anymore. You can't go to dangerous places. You can't go to places that you feel that might be a little bit out of the shchicha hezek shani. It goes into that category of shchicha hezek shani. Now, after the war, could be that after the war broke out, could be that a person needs to already, since it's shchicha, a person needs to apply for a gun permit. Could be that you need to have that guard on your synagogue and yeshivot. Why? Because it falls under this category. But one needs to know, as we explained before, that you're not allowed to put yourself in a danger. That we already explained. That lo yelech lemakom sakana. That's the command of our sages. The Sefer Hasidim explains. Sefer Hasidim says. Sefer Hasidim is. He explains and he brings down that if a person puts himself in a place that he might get hurt or damaged, a place of risk, he's going to be judged in Shamayim for that. Don't think that Hashem will protect you. What's the examples he gives? For example, he says, you can't start fighting with people. Some people feel that they're very strong. They walk down the street, they're ready to fight all the time. They're very agitated. They're on the edge. They're ready to fight. They have fire in their eyes. That's the way they walk. Well, if you get in fight really with somebody because you said something to him, especially here, again, you live in a place that there's many people. Today they call it mental disorder, mental illness. Like half the city is mental ill. So what are you going to do now? You walk down the street, you might bump into a mental ill person. You say a bad thing to him, he'll punch you, or might even take out a gun. Who doesn't have a gun today? Without permits. Half the city has guns already. Right? So the Sefer Hasidim says, don't rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you're putting yourself in a place of danger. That's not the correct thing to do. You're not allowed to go to such places, you're not allowed to hang out around these places, and you're not allowed to do anything that will bring out this danger like we're explaining right now. You might start agitating somebody for the wrong reason. You see that somebody cuts you in a car in New York, take a look who's cutting you. Normally, it's not a normal guy with a suit and a tie going to his office, right? Not a doctor or a surgeon. That's normally not who it is. So if before you start bipping him and start having a road rage, think twice. Somebody comes and you're ready to park and he goes right behind you. Hello, you live in New York. If that happens, leave it. Don't worry about it. Look for another park. It's not worth the argument that could end up, again, it's something that's considered, in my opinion, shchicha hezeka. It's something that the danger is real. So this is an idea that we need to realize, we need to take home at these very times and moments. Really, the poskim deal with the question, when is it considered makom hezek? When is a place considered a place of danger? There's different opinions about this. Some opinions, for example, the Avnei Nezer and of Menashe Klein, they say the same idea in different words. they ask the question, when are you supposed to rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu? When do you say Shomer Pta'im Hashem? As we explained before, don't worry about anything. Live your life. You don't have to worry about things. And when is it that you have to actually take precaution? And they say that same idea like here, that if the danger is real or if the danger is far. If the danger is real, one must take precaution. So when the era changes, when the spirit at the world changes, you see that the danger becomes real, like in our time, even though right now it quiet down, right? Now it's a little bit quiet down the last month. Less demonstrations, because they see nothing's happening. All the demonstrations don't get them anywhere. So it quiets down. Also, people get used to it. In the beginning, there's always a lot of noise, and then as time goes, it quiets down. But we already have experienced what happens when a war erupts. What would happen when a new war erupts, let's say with Hezbollah on the north? What would you do then? There'll be more things around here. And you don't know if the police is equipped enough to fight them or to hold them back. We've seen already what happened over here with the riots 4 years ago, looting the entire city. So therefore, we have to be protected. We have to be protected. When they come in their messes, there were demonstrations over here in Queens. When they come in their messes to harm somebody, you have to be protected. Because right now, we know already that there is a danger. There is an imminent danger. And therefore, it is recommended that every person, and especially a person that goes to shul, should have the means of protection. When you have something to be able to protect yourself, the danger usually also is not gonna try to erupt. It's not gonna try to aggravate you. It's not gonna try to come towards you. Why? There's an aspect of deterrence. They know that if you are armed, they'll look for an easy target. That's how it is always with bullies. Bullies always look for easy targets. If you're not an easy target, they'll leave you. They'll go to find an easier target. When you are in a crowd and a bully sees a large amount of people, to our eyes, all the people look the same. The bully notices exactly the weak person. He notices right away the vulnerable person out of the whole crowd, and he goes and targets him. That's how it is. They have this sense of who to target. Exactly, they know. And therefore, we have to always be protected in order just for that point, even just for that point, to have the deterrence. There's other points as well for being able to protect yourself.
How can we be protected? Through weapons?
Obviously. Not buy guns, get license. You have to do everything legally.
To all carry guns?
We should all apply. In my humble opinion, everybody should apply for a gun permit. Okay? Simple. That's what it is. Okay? Secondly, let's talk about the idea of when you are in a war. When you are in a war, there's many psukim in the Torah that tells us that one should not be fearful. For example, in Parashat Ekev, the Torah repeats this over and over again. The Torah speaks about going to a war in few parashot. Parashat Ekev, Parashat Shoftim. And in Parashat Ekev, the Torah repeats it a few times. Let's just see it inside. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to bring you to a land of Israel, and you would see over there all the beautiful things that you will inherit. And I'll give you all the place. But you might raise yourself with a question. כי תאמר בלבביך רבים הגויים האלה ממני איך אוכל להורישם. Perhaps you will say in your heart, these nations are more numerous than I. How will I be able to drive them out? Which means, you have over here a valid question that's true throughout generations. It's not only the time that they went to conquer the land of Israel, it's also today. We are very few, and if our enemies today are those that are fighting us, there's a billion of them in number. So how do you fight few millions? How would be able to conquer and win over a billion enemies that believe in radical ideas of how you should slaughter Jews? That's their belief. How do you fight that? What do you do?
Not through weapons.
Not through weapons. So not through weapon then?
Tefillah.
Yes. So you sit down and you pray all day, and that's all you need to do. Well, you need to know that when they went to conquer Eretz Israel in the Torah, let's talk Torah. They didn't just pray before they went in to conquer Eretz Israel. Of course they did, and they learned Torah. But they also did the Ishtadlut. They went inside and they fought a war with weapon. You know how much weapon they had? Did they have weapons, or maybe they didn't have? They only had Sidurim.
No, they had weapons.
How do you know they had weapons?
We're not at war over saying.
What? How do you know?
We're in Gaza. They're not really at war over here.
How do you know they had weapons in when they went to fight when they conquered Israel?
I don't know.
Oh, because it says "V'chamushim b'nei Israel yatzu me'eretz Mitzrayim." Chamushim yatzu b'nei Israel me'eretz Mitzrayim. What do you mean chamushim? Chamushim means they were armed. Am Israel were armed. Do you know why they had armed? They didn't go to conquer yet Eretz Israel. It was 40 years before. So why were they armed? Because they were feared. The Torah says, not me. Let's see the Torah. You know what? Your question. You know who answers your question? You ask a question. Maybe you don't need to do anything. You just need to sit down in shul and pray. That's all. But the Torah says the following. Let's see what the Torah says. וחמושים עלו בני ישראל מארץ מצרים. Why? כי אמר אלוהים, פן ילחם העם בראותם מלחמה, ושבו מצרימה. The Am Israel might see a war and go back to Egypt. Therefore, I'll arm them so they can protect themselves and fight the war. Says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, I don't understand. They're not going to see a war because לא נחם אלוהים דרך ארץ פלישתים, כי קרוב הוא. הקדוש ברוך הוא made them a detour. They're not going to see a war. Says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes them a detour. It takes them totally different route. So if they go in a totally different route, what's the problem? They don't need weapon. Hello? It's a waste of ammunition. In that money you can buy shas. What's the answer? Or HaChaim says, just the thought of the Israel knowing that they're not armed, just the thought, even though they're not, the danger is not around them, but it might come. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll arm them so they can feel protected. That's not my chidush. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu chidush. Ki amar Elohim. Who says? God. פן ילחם העם בראותם מלחמה ושבו מצרימה. Therefore, ויצב העם את העם דרך המדבר, ים סוף וחמושים עלו בני ישראל מארץ מצרים. Okay? Good?
Yeah, so they can feel better about themselves.
Yes,
Paranoia.
yes. The paranoia of Am Israel is apparently something that was accepted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's not considered a paranoia, rather a correct way of a person feel. You know what the Ramban says over here? The Ramban says that when you are armed, you feel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu armed them in order for them to feel not like slave running out of Egypt, but rather like people with means. When you are armed, it gives you confidence. It gives you feeling that you are able to protect yourself. When you walk down with your wife and your little kids, and you know that anybody can come and hurt you and beat you up, and he has a weapon, and you're not able to protect your little kids and your vulnerable wife, so you feel like that also. You feel whippy-whoppy. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would rather that you feel strong. That's a Ramban, not me. Meanwhile, I didn't say anything from me. Everything I quoted others. The Ramban here, v'chamushim b'nei Israel, he says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want that Am Yisrael should come out like slaves running out, but rather armed, strong. Okay? So let's see, what would you say when you hear, when you're still not satisfied, still not happy. You rather sit in yeshiva. So explain to me. I'll tell you what. The Maharal over here, the Maharal Miprag says over here.
According to what you
Yes.
So why most of the majority of the Golim Am Israel doesn't let
Of course they
the
do.
Avrechim to
Of course
go
they do.
to the army?
No, it's a different question.
So what is a different question? If you say
I'll
you
explain
can
to
give
you.
weapon and
Okay,
everything,
good question. Good question. Good question. It's a good question. I'll explain to you. I'll explain to you. There's two times. One time is considered a time of war, and one time is considered time not of war. And let's talk about these two categories so we can understand. At the time of war, there's also two types of war. There's milchemet mitzvah and milchemet reshut. Rambam says in Halachot Melachim that whenever there's a milchemet mitzvah, everybody got to go to fight the war. Milchemet reshut, not everybody. When milchemet mitzvah, afilu kala mechupata. You take a bride. She just said, Mazel Tov. The Chatan just broke the glass. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, they go into the Yichud room and they call her, hello, Yichud room, get out. Here's a gun, go fight the war. That's what you do when there's a war that's considered milchemet mitzvah. Milchemet reshut, there's different categories. What's it considered a milchemet mitzvah? Says the Rambam, the milchemet mitzvah means either the milchamot of Am Yisrael that they went to fight when they conquered Eretz Yisrael at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, or milchama like the milchamot keneged Sheva Amamim and Amalek, or, says the Rambam, milchama keneged oivim atzarim al Am Yisrael. If you have an attack on Am Yisrael, it's considered a milchemet mitzvah. Therefore, Melech doesn't have to ask permission for even Beddin to go and fight that war. En HaMelech mevakesh reshut mi Beddin. Normally, you have to ask reshut from Beddin, from milchemet reshut. You have to sit down and get that permission, got that okay, get approved. Now, you don't need to do anything. He goes into a war without permission. Why? It's considered milchemet mitzvah. Milchemet mitzvah, everybody has to go. Even kala mechupata and a person that learns in yeshiva, everybody has to go to war. So he's saying today why people don't go to war. So first of all, they do. And secondly, this has nothing to do with, let's put it this way. We're not talking here Zionism. We're not talking about over here a Jewish state. We're not. That's different questions that we can touch at a different time. We're talking about protecting Klal Yisrael. Halakha in Shulchan Aruch brings down in Siman Shin Kaftet that whenever there's enemies that come to the border of Jewish places, you mechalel Shabbat, says the Shulchan Aruch. You violate the Shabbat to go and fight a war with them. Even if they came only for money matters. They only want to come to rob the place. They only want to come take some grains. They only want to come to take some sheep. If it's in the border, you go and mechalel Shabbat. Everybody takes their jeeps, their guns, and you go to fight a war against them. Why? They only come for taking some sheep, some grains. What's the big deal? They come in to rob you. For robbing, you're not mechalel Shabbat. Says the Shulchan Aruch, the Mefarshim explain, Mishnah Berurah can take a look, because then haaretz nochal likavesh bifnehem. Once they close, they can go in even further. It becomes dangerous. Everybody has to go and violate the Shabbat. Everybody has to fight the war. So why people don't fight the war today, the yeshiva boys? Because A, they're not equipped to do so. C, what do you mean not equipped? They're not trained. So if they go over there, there's nothing to do with them. B, they're not needed. There's enough. Even whoever's in Gaza now, they send many of them. They send back. They don't need them. Also, there's an aspect which is true that whenever a person learns Torah, that's the real protection. As we explained before, that the Gemara says that Talmidei Chachamim einam tzrichim shmira. There's many Gemarot like that indicate and show that whenever you have people that are sitting and learning and or praying, those are really the people that conquering the war. The Gemara says in Makot that על מה היו רגלינו עומדות בשערי ירושלים? רגלינו היו עומדות בשערי ירושלים. Why? בזכות התורה שהיו לומדים. Which means whenever people learn, whenever people pray, that is the real winner at the war. But it's not enough because you have to have the hishtadlut. Hishtadlut means you have to have people actually fighting the war. If everybody sits in yeshiva and learns, nobody goes to fight the war, nothing will happen. You lose. That's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do everything spiritually, and so much so that when Yeshua saw the Malach, Yeshua was fighting a war, and the Malach came to Yeshua at night, where it's time to rest. They fight the war the whole day. At night it's pitch black. They didn't have different elements to make to be able to see how to fight the war. So the Malach sees Yeshua, and he says to him, "What are you doing?" He says, "What do you mean? I'm resting. I have a war tomorrow." So he tells him, "There's no such thing. At the time that you are resting, you must learn Torah." The explanation to that, say the Mefarshim, because the Torah itself is really what wins the war. But you have to also do the Ishtadlut, as I explained. The Yaakov Avinu says, "Asher kavashti becharbi uvekashti." The Yerushalmi explain, what does it mean, charbi uvekashti? Mefarshim bring down over here also. The Targum says, "Betzloti uvebauti." He conquered with his prayer the Ir Shechem. He was able to conquer. Rashi says on the spot over there that after the Maaseh of Dinah, that Shimon and Levi went and fought the war against the Ir Shechem, all the surrounding nations came to fight Yaakov Avinu. It says that in the Psukim over there. Vaytihi chitat Elokim. People got scared. How did people get scared? Rashi says over there, because Yaakov Avinu went to fight the war. But literally, he did go to fight the war. But he says himself that the winner of the war was Becharbi uvekashti, Bitzloti uvevauti, with my prayer and with my request to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This was what tilted the scale to win the war. But it had to have the ishtadlut of fighting an actual war. And therefore, if you take a look at the Rambam, and nobody argues on that, he says how to fight a war. You go to fight a war. There's explanations in the Rambam, exact ways of how a person should fight a war. And he doesn't say over there that when there's a war, or when there's a fear, or when there's a risk, all you need to do is sit in yeshiva and learn. No, you have to do also a hishtadlut. And this is how it was throughout generations.
Was David HaMelech like a big time warrior?
Yes, David HaMelech was a big time warrior, yes. David HaMelech himself teaches us that although he was always in Bet Midrash, praying and singing to Hashem and learning Torah and being Moreh Horah LaRabim and wake up in Chatzot akum leodot lach, still he went to fight wars, and he was a big warrior, yes. Aywa, so that's what he explained. Elef lamateh, that is what the Midrash says, that it would be Elef going to fight a war, and Elef that would sit and learn, really it says over there to pray, but whatever it is, to learn as well. So you need to have both things. But what I'm trying to explain, the notion that people, there's two notions. There's notion of those that are not religious, that those that think that if we sit down and learn, we are actually wasting resources and we're doing nothing. That is wrong. But at the same amount that this is wrong, it's wrong also for those that are extra religious, not religious, religious in mind, right? What we call fanfum, that is a Yiddish word, is extra frum. What does that mean? It means that they say that you don't need to do any ishtadlut. Just sit down and learn, or sit down and pray, and everything will be resolved by itself. This is also wrong, because you have to do ishtadlut. Same thing with your parnasa. You can't say that, you know what, I'm going to sit down and learn all day, and the parnasa will come to me. You have to have means how the parnasa will come to you. And even those Talmidei Chachamim that sit down and learn all day, the biggest Talmidei Chachamim, they have parnasa, either from Kollel, the Kollel pays them. Why the Kollel pays them? They should say, no, Hashem will send it to me. If you're in such a high level of bitachon, He will send it to you. But you have to be an extremely high level. Normally, you have to do the ishtadlut, so you have to have an arrangement. The Kollel pays you, and you do something on the side, or your wife works, or you have a nice father-in-law that takes care of you, something. But you have to have a means of ishtadlut. Who had a question over there? Rabbi? Oh. Chavod.
Is it about the current war that's going on in Gaza right now? Is that a milchemet mitzvah or milchemet reshut?
So I want to tell you something. There are those that would learn that it's milchemet mitzvah from the fact that I explained right now that it's milchama min atzarim abayim le'area, which means they're coming to kill us. We have that's whenever you are in defense and you're trying to push back the enemy, that's called the milchemet mitzvah. But many say that no, it's a din in melech. In other words, the king himself doesn't need to ask reshut. But if there's no king, like today, so it doesn't have a din of milchemet mitzvah. Let's say that's correct. It doesn't really make a difference. As I explained to you, there's a Shulchan Aruch beferush that even on Shabbat, whenever there's an enemy that comes and threatens you on the border, you have to go and violate Shabbat and go to protect yourself. And you know what? Without anything, it just makes sense. If somebody comes to hurt you, it says in the Gemara, in Sanhedrin, Aba leorgecha ashkem leorgo. You know what? This is not even, you don't need Chazal for that, because this is simple logic. The Gemara says, Lama likra svarau. There's two places in Shas that it says that. And the explanation is that whenever you have things that are so simple, so you don't need the Gemara for that to tell it to you. Over here, the Gemara tells it to me, but it's not like, the Gemara says, Lama likra. You don't need a pasuk for that. Over there, you learn it from the Maaseh of Ba B'Machteret, but you don't need it. It's so simple that somebody comes to hurt you, you don't say like the Christians say, if they slap you on one cheek, you give them the second cheek. You don't give them the second cheek, because giving them the second cheek, then afterwards you're also going to get a bullet on your head as well. So you have to be protected, and you have to do everything to be able to protect yourself. This was the Hakdama, the preface of what I wanted to talk, okay? Now we're going to start talking, but I see there's more questions. Yes?
But like with all this ishtablut, isn't it kind of like going around the fact that if we would all just do teshuvah, then Hashem would just end the galut and Mashiach would come and we wouldn't have to fight anything?
Yes. So you have over here two aspects, as we explained, and your aspect is the aspect of the spiritual aspect, which is very, very important, and one without the other doesn't work. In other words, if you're not religious and you're going to fight a war, you don't have a Kadosh Baruch Hu on your side. It's not going to be too successful. So you have to do ishtadlut in a spiritual level, which is the tshuva, which is the Torah, which is praying, and so on and so forth. Yes. But on the same, and hope and pray that Mashiach will come and save us. But you can't rely on that, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to go and do also physical ishtadlut. Not us, not we want to do that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do it. Whenever we are in this world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to behave according to this world. The Minchat Chinuch explains, the Minchat Chinuch is Rishon of Aaron HaLevi. He explains, not Minchat Chinuch, Sefer HaChinuch explains that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you. This is a mitzvah of Ma'akeh, that a person should put a fence to places that are high. A person should always behave according to this world. The Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to ignore the earthly world that you are experiencing and just live spiritually beyond nature. He wants you to do everything according to nature. That's what he explains. Why? There's reasons why he wants us to do that, which is beyond now. It's explained. The explanation is a little bit more. It needs a little bit more explanation so that it's a little bit wider and deeper. But what we're trying to explain over here is that you have to have these two aspects. You're right what you're saying. You have to do everything you can on the spiritual.
But can our enemies even be defeated if we don't fix the spiritual problem?
If we don't,
can we conquer Eretz Yisrael fully, like without the actual Geula happening?
The Geula is the final redemption. We're not talking about the Geula. We're talking up to that time.
Is it even possible to fully defeat our enemies, to fully conquer the land before
So I tell you what, the Torah says in Parashat Matot, the Torah says over there that when you conquer the land of Israel, don't leave one person over there. Why? Because it's going to be lemokesh yelach ulitzninim benenecha, which means they'll constantly be terrorizing you if you leave them there. Why is that? Al haaretz asher yashav ba. Because of the land he was sitting there. You came in and you kicked him out of his house. Now, is it really his house? No, he took it from us because this is our house. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to us. But on the same time, he feels that you took away his land. He'll never come down. He'll never feel that it's okay for you to be here and we'll be here just peaceful citizens. It doesn't work like that. And therefore, don't leave them here. You can bring, if you want to have people coming from outside, sitting and settling here, that's fine, that's one thing. But to have those enemies that you just defeated stay here, you should know they'll be terrorizing you forever and ever. That's not a safe thing. This is not a logical thing that I'm telling you. The Torah says that. Hashem says that. So definitely that is the approach that we should take. Any more questions? Bechavod. No more questions. Chazak uvaruch tiyu.